the first time, we have the capability, the technology, and the knowledge to achieve a global society of abundance for all. We cannot continue as we are, or the consequences will surely be dire.
What is the sixth extinction? Is it happening right now? What's the cause of it?
What we as human beings are doing to the planet, changing the basic conditions of life very dramatically and very rapidly.
And yet, from environmental disaster to war, our obsolete value systems perpetuate insanity, threatening us on many fronts. Is it the best we can do to just clean up after the fact? Are politicians capable or even competent to manage the world around us?
Speaker, let me explain.
The Prime Minister.
Are we simply incapable of anticipating and planning for our future? Are we innately flawed in ways we can't change?
Why not just use firing squad?
We often hear that human nature is fixed.
Only human nature.
And our worst qualities are inborn.
How are they going to stop being criminals?
Oh, nonsense. They were born that way, and there's no use trying to change them.
Just like mechanical systems, our behavior has no single cause.
God gives people good blood and bad blood, and there's an end to it.
Our behavior is generated by the many interacting variables that we encounter.
So if you make a law and say that you're not to steal food, they will steal food if that serves their family needs. Any law that's made by man that doesn't fit the circumstances of reality will be violated.
Higher ideals and aspirations that people hope for can't be realized when there is deprivation and war.
If you want to go bomb somebody, there's remarkably little discussion about how much it might cost, but when you have a discussion about whether or not we can assist people who are suffering, then suddenly we become very, cost conscious.
No culture evaluates human behavior in this way. If they did, they would question, what is it that generates greed, bigotry, inequities, and war?
They bring you up with the values that put them in power.
Unfortunately, all societies to date have indoctrinated people toward values that perpetuate those in power.
If the bottom line and it's a profit-driven world, then those interests are going to be served first, and everything is going to be secondary, and that's the sad reality of it.
There is no value system that's put out there that is actually beneficial to humanity because it's based on consumerism and profit-making.
And we use artificial pumping in animals to make them grow faster. So if you can multiply the cells of the chicken faster, you can sell it sooner. But does that have an effect on the human body? They don't worry about it. They worry about the sale of chickens.
Wealth is going to the rich faster than any other time in history.
The success of the industrialized world has been dependent on the failure and the lack of development of the developing world. I mean, the reason that they're stifled is because they are indebted to the first world. We wouldn't be prospering if it weren't for the labor that's going on and the indentured servitude that's going on in the entire developing country. And so that's the power dynamic can never change in that respect because it's literally dependent on it being that way.
The dirty and dangerous work done by children.
The jobs down in the pits are typically reserved for teenagers with only tree limbs to brace the mine walls. The risk to them is real.
Rich governments like to say they're helping poor countries develop. But who's developing who here? Each year, poor countries are paying about $600 billion in debt service to rich countries on loans that have already been paid off many times over. And then there's the money that poor countries lose from trade rules imposed by rich countries. Altogether, that's more than $2 trillion every year.
Money systems have existed for centuries, and whether we realize it or not, have always been used to control behavior by limiting the purchasing power of the majority of people. One example of this is the criminal justice system.
Many proclaim prisons don't work, but ultimately, prisons are a resounding success as a tool for social control to safeguard the political and economic established system.
If you hire people whose only expertise is caging people to try to fix social problems, you're not going to get a very good solution. But I think that they're very good at caging people, and I think that's why mass incarceration has been a huge success for the ruling class in this country. The United States is really number one in a lot of things, and I think the biggest thing that we can say that we're number one in is how many people we lock up. And the United States has roughly 5% of the world's population, but we've got 25% of the world's prisoners. China has 4 times as many people as the United States does and half as many prisoners. The United States has more prisoners than the Soviet Union did at the height of the purges and the collectivization in the 1930s and the infamous Soviet Gulag.
Poverty is a vicious cycle, rarely escaped by the poor. Studies found that scarcity can reduce mental capacity and cognitive performance. In children, it affects their brain development and memory. Additionally, the poor are often forced to live in areas of low air quality.
Far from being a problem for only the poor, all areas of the socioeconomic spectrum suffer when our air, food, and water are polluted by fossil fuel emissions and radiation.
It is probable that war itself could be our undoing, let alone the environment. Our brutal, competitive behaviors are not human nature, but simply a result of scarcity, making us all competitors in the fight to attain what we need to survive. And while scarcity is naturally occurring, it's also intentional in industries and governments for profit and national interest. As long as nations are immersed in scarcity, we will continue to have conflicts between people. Crimes, murder, and other violence, to all-out war, the ultimate expressions of human stupidity.
The ground shook in the U.S. bombardment.
Bomb the heck out of them.
These behaviors must be surpassed if we wish to survive.
The bombs on!
That's the best recruiting tool for Al-Qaeda. This guarantees the cycle of violence will go on.
And with our technological ability to provide for all, we must take steps towards a different approach. Or the endless cycle of booms, busts, and war will continue.
No! Peace in our time! Wait a minute ago!
Nobody, including the United, and most of all the United States, goes to war to liberate or spread democracy. The only incentive on a practical level to go to war is to acquire resources. In the United States case, it frequently is either energy resources, shall I say, supporting political alliances to preserve access to energy resources.
Smedley Butler, a U.S. Marine Corps General Major who was the most decorated Marine at the time of his death, stated it well when he wrote,
I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico safe for American oil interests. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the international banking house of Brown Brothers. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interests. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies. In China, I helped see to it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back on it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best that he could do was operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents. War is a racket. It always has been. A few profit and the many pay. But there is a way to stop it. You can end it by disarmament conferences. It can be smashed effectively only by taking the profit out of war.
Our universities today are better equipped than ever. Best microscopes, the best scientific equipment. The bombs are getting worse. The wars are getting worse. Killing is getting worse. You don't need to kill people, bomb cities. There's something wrong with our culture, very wrong.
To blame any individual or corporation does not get at the root causes of the problems. The structure of our socio-economic system itself has everyone out to meet their own needs, creating a predatory, competitive environment. Attempting to find solutions to the monumental problems within our present society will only serve as temporary patchwork, prolonging what is quickly becoming an obsolete system. Now more than ever, a sustainable civilization is possible, and furthermore, essential. Our social designs, language, and values have evolved from ages ago. The reality of scarcity in earlier times shaped our behaviors and remains deeply entrenched in all cultures today. The history of civilization is a story of change, and this includes our social systems as well.
Our earliest enlightenments were but stepping stones in the sequential development to our present science and technology, which could now produce and distribute abundance to everyone.
There's no question that many jobs simply aren't coming back, but probably the biggest single driver of that is the way technology is racing ahead. If we continue on current paths, the next 10 years will be even more disruptive than the last 10 years because the technology is accelerating faster.
If you keep laying off people and putting in machines, which is happening in the auto industry, they pick up the whole car and turn around, shove the engine in, they're moving people out. There comes a time when millions won't have the purchasing power to buy cars. That's when the system collapses.
But all of our growth is associated with increased consumption, increased use of energy and other resources. And when you ask economists, well, what's the alternative that enables us to continue to be prosperous without destroying the natural environment on which we depend? And they don't seem to have an answer for that.
There's no solution within the present-day type society.
The Venus Project proposes a workable alternative.
The aim of the Venus Project is to secure, protect, and assure a more humane world for all through the application of technology and cybernetics with human and environmental concern.
People need information to be able to move into the future intelligently. Without information, there's no way you can develop a sustainable culture. It can't be done politically because the problems are technical. If you succeeded in arranging for the most ethical people in the world of the highest morality and put them in government, when your lights fail in your house, you need an electrician. When the dams don't generate enough electricity, you don't need a highly moral politician. You need an electrical engineer. So our problems in the world can be solved by technical people.
These are your research centers. Everything studied in these areas is to improve your standard of living and everybody else there. There would be no lawyers, no bankers, no ad agencies, no insurance people, no salespeople. Without money, you don't need any of those things. So you could go right into solving the problems that all of us have. That's what we'd be working on. Today, we're fighting over people who have different values, and we're fighting over scarce resources. In the future, you won't have to do that. You'd be working cooperatively to improve the standard of living for everyone.
A lot of people think that I want to give people things for nothing, and that's going to spoil people. The fact that you're born in America, you'd have nothing to do with the airplane, the telephone, the railways. It's all here. And you're lucky because you inherited that, just being born here. That doesn't spoil you. So there's really no basis for crime. Since anyone can access anything they need, no one's going to hit you on your head and take your wallet because there's no money in it anymore. The monetary system has been surpassed.
And when we have that kind of abundance economy, most of us will be able to spend most of our time doing the things we enjoy doing. The kinds of things that you might have seen the Athenians do during their golden age. They had human slaves take care of their basic needs. We can do it with robots.